The sky over Illyria burned red, not the soft red of sunset, but the angry pulsing red of dying shields and falling cities. Smoke curled from the shattered spires of the capital, and the ground trembled with every distant impact. The Cathar Dominion had come, and they showed no mercy. Daniel Ross stood on the cracked observation deck of Fort Haven, his hands gripping the railing until his knuckles turned white. He was tall, with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too much too soon. Once he had been just another officer from Luna Station, training cadets and running drills in quiet orbit. Now he was one of the last human commanders still standing in a war that was already lost. Below him, the last shuttles lifted off, packed with civilians and wounded soldiers. Their engines screamed as they clawed their way through the thick ash-filled air, heading for the few remaining evacuation points. But even those were running out of time. The Cathar fleet hung in orbit like a swarm of black beetles, silent and patient, waiting for the planet to bleed dry. Inside the command bunker beneath the fort, Mara Finch studied the tactical display with tired eyes. She was lean, sharp-minded, and had a habit of chewing her lower lip when deep in thought. Born on Mars Colony 3, she had joined the Concordance Defense Corps hoping to see the stars. Instead, she had spent the last 6 months watching allies fall one by one. Now only humans and a handful of broken alien units remained on Illyria. The Eastern Shield generator just went offline, she said, her voice flat. That's the last one. Daniel didn't answer right away. He watched a Cathar dropship streak across the sky, trailing fire. It slammed into the far ridge, and seconds later, the ground shook again. Dust rained down from the ceiling of the bunker. Any word from High Command? He finally asked. Mara shook her head. They sent a final broadcast an hour ago, said, "All hope is lost." Then the channel went dark. Daniel let out a slow breath. He had expected it, but hearing it still felt like a punch to the gut. The Galactic Concordance, the alliance of dozens of species that had ruled the galaxy for centuries, had given up. They had abandoned Illyria. They had abandoned everyone. Outside, the wind howled through broken buildings. Somewhere in the ruins, a child cried. The sound was faint, almost swallowed by the rumble of distant explosions, but Daniel heard it. He always heard it. We can't hold them off much longer, Mara said, turning to face him. Her uniform was torn at the shoulder, stained with soot and dried blood that wasn't hers. Our ammo's low. Power cells are at 20%. And the medics say we've run out of painkillers. Daniel nodded. He knew all of it. He'd checked the reports himself. There was no miracle coming. No rescue fleet. No last-minute weapon hidden in some vault. Just dust, fire, and silence. Yet he straightened his back and looked Mara in the eye. Then we make them pay for every inch. She gave a small, tired smile. That's what I thought you'd say. They moved quickly after that. Orders were sent to the remaining squads. Hold the inner perimeter, fall back to Sector 7, destroy anything the Cathar might use. It wasn't a plan for victory. It was a plan to die with honor. As night fell, the Cathar began their final assault. Not with bombs or orbital strikes, but with ground troops. Thousands of them poured from the dropships, moving in perfect unison, their black armor glinting under the emergency floodlights. They didn't shout. They didn't taunt. They just advanced, silent and unstoppable. Daniel led a group of 20 soldiers through the ruined streets, using collapsed buildings and burning wrecks for cover. They fired pulse rifles, tossed grenades, and fell back again and again. Each time their numbers shrank. By midnight, only 8 were left. Mara coordinated from the bunker, patching together broken comms, rerouting power from dead sectors, and calling in the last of their drone strikes. One by one, the drones winked out on her screen. Then the lights in the bunker flickered and died. She switched to battery backup, her fingers flying over the console. "They're at the main gate," a voice crackled over the radio. It was Sergeant Cole, one of the few Terran Marines left. "We're not going to hold them." "Fall back to the inner vault," Mara ordered. "I'll seal the blast doors behind you." There was a pause. "Then copy that. Tell Ross." "It's been an honor." The line went dead. Mara swallowed hard but didn't cry. There wasn't time. She entered the final command sequence, and deep below the fort, massive steel doors slammed shut with a final echoing boom. For now, the Cathar were blocked, but they wouldn't stay that way for long. Up above, Daniel crouched behind a shattered fountain, reloading his rifle with shaking hands. His left arm was bleeding from a shrapnel wound, but he barely felt it. Around him, the city was quiet, too quiet. The Cathar had stopped advancing. That meant they were regrouping. Or waiting. He looked up at the sky. Through the smoke and haze, he could just make out the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was still turning. Mars still spun in its orbit. People were living, laughing, sleeping, unaware that the last human soldiers in this part of the galaxy were about to vanish into history. A soft beep came from his wrist comm. It was Mara. "They're jamming everything," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But I got one clear channel left. For a few more minutes. Then use it to get out," Daniel said. "There's a maintenance tunnel under the vault. Leads to the old mining shafts. You might make it to the southern ridge." "I'm not leaving you," she replied. "You have to. Someone needs to tell them what happened here. Someone needs to remember silence. Then I'll wait 5 minutes. No more." Daniel smiled faintly. "Fair enough." He stood up, checked his ammo, 3 rounds left, and took a deep breath. The Cathar would be coming soon. He wouldn't go down hiding. But then, something strange happened. The sky flickered, not with lightning or explosion, but with a ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. Far out in the void, beyond the Cathar fleet, space itself seemed to bend. A patch of darkness grew darker, then split open like a wound. Mara's voice cut through the comm, sharp with disbelief. "Daniel, do you see that?" He did, and so did the Cathar. Their entire formation froze. Their ships turned, weapons powering up, sensors scanning wildly. From the tear in space, something emerged. First, one shape, then 10, then 100. Massive angular vessels, black as night but lined with faint blue running lights. They moved without sound, without warning. No comms, no hails, no identification, just silence and presence. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He didn't recognize the design. It wasn't concordance. It wasn't Cathar. It wasn't anything in the known galaxy. But then he saw it. A small emblem on the lead ship's hull, barely visible even through his scope. A circle with a single star inside. His heart pounded. That was Earth's old symbol. From before first contact. From before they were told they were too young, too primitive to join the galactic community. "Mara," he whispered. That's us." On the comm, she didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice trembled. "But how? We don't have ships like that." "We never did," Daniel didn't know. But as the first human warship powered up its weapons and the Cathar fleet scrambled in panic, one thought filled his mind. Maybe hope wasn't gone after all. Deep in the ruins of Fort Haven, Mara Finch held her breath. The comm in her ear crackled with static, then silence. Outside the bunker, the Cathar had stopped moving. Even their machines had gone quiet. It was as if the entire enemy force had frozen in place, staring up at the sky. Mara's fingers hovered over the console. Her screen showed the strange fleet emerging from the rift in space. They were huge, bigger than any concordance dreadnought. Their hulls were smooth, dark and lined with glowing blue strips that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. No flags, no signals. Just power. She tapped her comm. "Daniel, do you have visual on their weapons?" A pause, then his voice tight with awe. "They're charging something big." Mara's mind raced. Earth hadn't built warships in over a century. Not since the Concordance declared humanity non-threatening and banned them from military development beyond basic defense. Mars and Luna had patrol cutters, nothing more. So where did this armada come from? Before she could wonder further, the lead ship fired. It wasn't a laser or plasma bolt. It was a beam of pure gravity, silent, invisible, and devastating. It struck the nearest Cathar command vessel and crushed it like paper. The ship folded in on itself, then vanished into a flicker of distorted light. No explosion. Just gone, panic erupted among the Cathar. Their fleet scattered, engines flaring as they tried to escape. But the human ships moved faster than anything should. They cut through space like blades through water, surrounding the enemy in perfect formation. Down on the surface, Daniel watched in stunned silence as Cathar dropships lost power and crashed into the ruins. Their ground troops staggered, disoriented, their hive mind link severed by the sudden chaos above. "What do we do?" asked a young soldier beside him, rifle trembling in his hands. Daniel didn't answer right away. He was watching the largest human ship, the one with the star emblem, turn slowly toward Illyria. It wasn't attacking the planet. It was protecting it. "We hold," he finally said, "and we wait." Back in the bunker, Mara pulled up every sensor feed she could salvage. The human fleet wasn't just powerful, it was smart. They targeted command nodes, relay stations, and shield generators with surgical precision. They avoided civilian zones, even ruined ones. This wasn't random destruction. It was strategy. Then she saw something else. Buried in the fleet's encrypted ID burst, just for a split second before it locked down, was a code she recognized. Project Aegis. A name she'd heard only once as a child in a hushed conversation between her parents. They'd said it was a myth, a story to comfort scared colonists. But myths don't crush alien warships. Far from Illyria, beyond the edge of known space, the truth waited in the cold dark. For over 100 years, Earth had pretended to be weak. After first contact, the older species of the galaxy looked down on humans. They called them late bloomers, unstable, too emotional for galactic order. The concordance allowed them limited trade, small colonies, and no voice in council. Humanity accepted it publicly. In secret, the nations of Earth united, not for war but for survival. They knew the galaxy was dangerous. They'd seen what happened to species that couldn't defend themselves, so they built something no one expected. Deep in the Oort cloud, past Neptune's orbit, hidden inside hollowed-out comets and disguised asteroid bases, they constructed a fleet. Not flashy, not loud, just strong, silent drives, armor that absorbed energy, weapons that bent physics, and crews trained not for glory, but for endurance. This was Project Aegis, and it had been waiting. On the bridge of the lead ship, the USS Vanguard Fleet Admiral Owen Hale stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He was in his 60s with silver hair and calm eyes that missed nothing. He had waited his whole life for this moment, not to conquer but to answer. Beside him, Lila Grant monitored the gravitic capacitors. She was in her 30s with messy brown hair tied back and grease smudges on her cheek. She'd designed half the Vanguard's core systems. Quiet, brilliant, and fiercely protective of her crew. "They're breaking," she said, eyes on the display. "Cathar command structure is collapsing." Owen nodded. "Good, let them run. We don't need to kill them all. Just make sure they never come back." Lila glanced at him. "What about the concordance?" "They'll want answers." "They'll get them," Owen said. "But not yet. First, we save who we can." Back on Illyria, the Cathar ground forces began to retreat. Without orders from their hive mind, they were lost. Some fought blindly. Others simply shut down, kneeling in the rubble like broken machines. Daniel and his team moved cautiously through the streets, helping wounded soldiers and civilians they found hiding in basements. The sky was clearer now. The red glow had faded, replaced by the steady blue light of the human ships hovering in orbit. Mara finally left the bunker. She climbed the broken stairs, her boots crunching on glass and stone. When she reached the surface, she saw Daniel standing in the open, looking up. "They came," she said softly. He turned and gave her a tired smile. Yeah, they did. Neither of them knew who they were. Not really. But they knew one thing: these ships were human. And they had arrived just when hope had run out. In orbit, the Vanguard lowered a shuttle. It landed gently in the center of what was left of Fort Haven's courtyard. The ramp opened and two figures stepped out, both in dark gray uniforms with the star emblem on their shoulders. One was Owen Hale, the other was Lila Grant. Daniel and Mara approached slowly. Soldiers and survivors gathered behind them, silent and wide-eyed. Owen stopped a few feet away. He looked at Daniel's torn uniform, Mara's soot-streaked face, and the broken city around them. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened. "I'm sorry it took us so long," he said. Mara shook her head. "We didn't even know you existed." "We couldn't tell anyone," Lila said quietly. "Not even our own colonies. If the concordance found out, they would have shut us down, or used us as a weapon." Owen stepped forward. "But today you're not alone anymore." Just then, a weak signal came through on Mara's comm. It was from a rescue beacon near the southern ridge. Someone was still alive out there. Daniel looked at Owen. "We have people to save." Owen nodded. "Then let's get to work." The human fleet held position in orbit, a silent shield against the void. Below, survivors began to emerge from hiding. Medics from the Vanguard joined local crews, treating wounds with advanced nanogel and portable scanners. Engineers assessed the damage, already planning repairs. Lila walked with Mara through the ruins, pointing out how the Cathar tech worked, how their hive mind could be disrupted. Mara listened, asking sharp questions, her mind already shifting from survival to strategy. Meanwhile, Daniel stood with Owen on a broken balcony, watching the stars. "Why now?" Daniel asked. "Why not earlier?" Owen sighed. "Because we had to be sure. If we showed ourselves too soon, the Concordants would have turned on us. They feared strong newcomers. We waited until the Cathar broke them, until no one else could stop the slaughter. Then we stepped in." Daniel looked down at his hands. "We were told humans were the weakest link." Owen smiled faintly. "Sometimes the quiet ones are the strongest." High above, the Vanguard's lights glowed steady against the night sky. For the first time in months, Illyria felt safe. But both men knew this was only the beginning. The Cathar would regroup. The Concordants would demand explanations. And Earth's secret was out. Still, as the first medevac shuttles lifted off with survivors, and children peeked out from shelters with wonder in their eyes, something new took root in the ashes. Not just relief, but trust. And maybe, just maybe, a future worth fighting for. The Cathar did not retreat quietly. Even broken, they were dangerous. From the edge of the Illyria system, their remaining ships gathered like wounded predators, regrouping around a massive command spire that pulsed with dark energy. They had lost their hive mind link, but not their hunger for conquest. And now, they had a new enemy to hate. On the bridge of the USS Vanguard, Owen Hale studied the sensor readings with quiet focus. The Cathar were forming a defensive ring near the gas giant Helios Prime. Their ships were damaged, but their weapons still worked. And they had something new. Something hidden inside the spire. Lila Grant stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "They're building a resonance bomb," she said. "If they detonate it near Illyria's core, it could crack the planet open." Owen didn't flinch. "Then we stop them before they finish." Below, on the surface, Daniel and Mara helped load the last of the survivors onto evacuation shuttles. Most civilians were already off-world, sent to nearby Concordance outposts that had reopened their gates after the human fleet appeared. But some soldiers refused to leave. They wanted to fight. "We're not helpless," said a young Marine named Eli, his arm in a sling. "Let us join your fleet." Daniel looked at him, then at the Vanguard hovering above like a silent guardian. "You'll need training. And new gear. We'll learn fast," Eli said. Mara nodded. "They're good. I fought beside them." Daniel made the call. He contacted Owen and requested that the remaining human volunteers be integrated into the WarArmada. To his surprise, Owen agreed immediately. "Every hand counts," the Admiral said. "Bring them aboard." Within hours, shuttles ferried the last defenders of Illyria up to the fleet. They were tired, bruised, and wide-eyed as they stepped onto the decks of ships they'd never imagined. The corridors were clean, the air crisp, and the crew moved with calm purpose. No shouting, no panic, just discipline. Lila met them in the main hangar of the Vanguard. She handed out data pads with basic ship layouts and emergency protocols. "You're not guests," she told them. "You're part of this now. Learn fast." Daniel and Mara were given temporary officer status. They were assigned to the tactical wing, working directly under Lila. It felt strange, going from near certain death to standing on a warship that could level cities. But neither of them wasted time on awe. They had a job to do. The WarArmada prepared for its next move. 300 ships, now slightly fewer after the first battle, formed into 5 strike groups. Each had a role: scouts, shield breakers, fire support, command, and reserve. The plan was simple: hit the Cathar spire before the bomb was ready. Owen gave the order at dawn Illyrian time. Break their spine. The fleet jumped into slipstream, vanishing from orbit in a ripple of blue light. They reappeared near Helios Prime just as the Cathar finished arming the resonance core. Alarms blared across the alien fleet, but it was too late. The human ships struck like a storm. Railgun rounds, accelerated to near light speed, tore through Cathar hulls before their shields could react. Plasma lances followed, melting armor into slag. But the real weapon was the gravitic pulse, Lila's design. It didn't destroy ships. It twisted space around them, crushing engines and snapping structural frames like dry twigs. Daniel watched from the Vanguard's tactical deck as Cathar vessels folded in on themselves, one after another. Mara called out enemy movements, her voice steady despite the chaos on screen. "They're trying to shield the spire," she said. 3 heavy cruisers moving into position. "Take out their engines," Lila ordered. "Not the hulls. Disable them," gunners obeyed. Precision shots struck engine nacelles. The cruisers drifted, powerless, as human frigates slipped past them like ghosts. Owen stood at the center of it all, unmoved by the violence. He wasn't enjoying it. He was ending it. Target the spire's core, he said. Lila hesitated. If we hit it wrong, it could detonate. Then hit it right. She nodded, fingers flying over her console. She rerouted power from non-essential systems, feeding everything into the main gravitic cannon. The Vanguard groaned as energy surged through its frame. Lights dimmed. Air recyclers slowed, but the weapon charged. On the view screen, the Cathar spire loomed, a jagged black tower crackling with violet energy. At its heart, the resonance bomb pulsed like a dying star. Firing solution locked, Lila said. Fire, Owen commanded. The shot was silent, invisible. But the effect was instant. The spire shuddered, cracks spread across its surface. Then, with a flash of white light, it collapsed inward, not exploding but imploding. The resonance bomb was crushed before it could activate. The shockwave rippled through the Cathar fleet, scrambling their systems and severing what little unity they had left. Panic turned to rout. Cathar ships broke formation, fleeing in all directions. Some jumped to slipstream. Others powered down, surrendering. A few fought to the last, but they were quickly overwhelmed. The battle lasted less than 2 hours. When it was over, the human fleet held the system. No cheers came over the comms. No victory speeches. Just quiet reports of damage, casualties, and cleanup. Daniel exhaled for the first time in hours. His hands were shaking. Mara leaned against a console, eyes closed, breathing deeply. Lila turned to them. You did well. We just watched, Daniel said. You held your nerve, she replied. That's half the battle. Later in the mess hall, the new recruits sat with veteran crew members. Stories were shared. Of Illyria's fall, of Earth's silence, of the long watch in the dark. No one boasted. No one lied. They were all just humans, finally seeing each other clearly. Owen walked among them, not as a hero, but as a leader. He spoke to wounded soldiers, thanked medics, and listened to engineers complain about burnt-out capacitors. He carried the weight of command, but he didn't let it crush him. Back on the bridge, Lila reviewed the damage reports. The Vanguard had lost 12 crew members. Other ships had suffered more. But they had won, and Illyria was safe. She looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, the rest of the galaxy was watching, wondering, worrying. But for now, in this moment, there was peace. And for the first time in a long time, it felt earned. The victory over the Cathar left a silence heavier than war. Smoke still rose from Illyria's ruins, but the sky was clear now, empty of enemy ships, full of human ones. Yet peace did not feel like peace. It felt like waiting. Within days, ships from the Galactic Concordance arrived. Not fighters or warships, but sleek diplomatic vessels with polished hulls and bright signal lights. They hovered at the edge of the system, sending polite but urgent messages. They wanted to speak with the leaders of the human fleet. Owen Hale agreed, but on his terms. He met them aboard the Vanguard, in a small conference room with no windows and shielded comms. The delegation included a tall, silver-scaled Veln ambassador, a soft-spoken insectoid from the Zenth Collective, and a human-looking envoy from the Old Terran Exclusion Council, the very group that had once declared Earth unfit for galactic affairs. They sat across from Owen and Lila, their expressions unreadable. You hid your strength for over a century, the Veln said, voice like wind through stone. Why? Owen didn't look away. Because you would not have allowed it. The Zenth envoy tilted its head. We protected younger species, we kept you safe. Safe? Lila spoke for the first time, her voice quiet but sharp. You called us children. You barred us from defense councils. You laughed when we asked for equal trade rights. And when the Cathar came, you left Illyria to burn. The human envoy shifted uncomfortably. We didn't know you had this fleet. You never asked, Owen said. You assumed we were weak, and that assumption nearly got everyone killed. Silence filled the room. The Concordance delegates exchanged glances. They had come expecting gratitude. Instead, they found truth. Later, alone in the corridor, Lila leaned against the wall, rubbing her temples. The weight of what they'd done pressed on her. Not the fighting, but the revealing. Earth's secret was out, and secrets once broken could never be put back. Daniel found her there. He'd been helping relocate survivors to temporary habitats on Illyria's moon. His uniform was clean now, but his eyes were tired. "They're scared of us," he said. Lila nodded. "They should be. Not because we'll hurt them, but because we won't obey them anymore." Mara joined them, holding a data pad with new sensor logs. "The Cathar aren't gone," she said. "Scouts report splinter groups forming near the Rimward Nebula. Some are trying to rebuild. Others are calling for revenge." Owen called a full command meeting that evening. In the dim light of the strategy room, holograms showed the scattered Cathar remnants. They were broken, but not defeated. And, without a central hive mind, they were unpredictable, more dangerous in some ways. "We can't chase them forever," said a young captain named Reyes. "We'll stretch ourselves too thin." "We don't have to chase them," Owen replied. "We make sure they know. If they threaten a peaceful world again, we will find them. And we will end them." It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. But the bigger problem wasn't the Cathar. It was trust. The Concordance began spreading rumors. Some said humanity had planned this all along, that they let the galaxy bleed so they could rise as the new rulers. Others claimed Project Aegis was just the beginning, that Earth had more hidden fleets waiting in the dark. Lila heard the whispers through intercepted comms. She wanted to shout the truth, that they built the WarArmada not for power, but because no one else would protect them. But shouting wouldn't help. Only actions would. So she worked. She opened the Vanguard's engineering logs to Concordance inspectors, showing them the years of quiet development, the failed prototypes, the sacrifices made in secret. She invited alien scientists to tour the ship, under guard but with full access. Slowly, doubt turned to respect. Meanwhile, Daniel and Mara helped draft a new charter, one that placed humanity not above the Concordance but beside it. Equal voice, equal responsibility, no more exclusion. It wasn't easy. Old wounds ran deep. But the sight of human ships saving alien refugees, sharing medical supplies and repairing orbital stations spoke louder than words. One evening, as the sun set over Illyria's rebuilt comms tower, Owen stood with Daniel on the observation deck of a repair station. "You think they'll ever truly trust us?" Daniel asked. Owen watched a Concordance freighter dock nearby, its lights blinking in friendly rhythm. "Trust isn't given, it's earned, and we've just started earning it." Back on the Vanguard, Lila received a message from Earth. It was short, encrypted, and signed by the Sol Defense Council. They were proud, but they were also afraid. What if the galaxy turned on them now? What if war came to the inner system? Lila wrote back one line. "Then we'll be ready, but we won't start it." She saved the message, then opened a new file. This one wasn't for weapons or shields. It was for something new, a joint exploration initiative with the Zenth and Velon, a mission to map the uncharted sectors beyond the Cathar border. Not with guns, but with science. Mara saw the file on her screen later. She smiled for the first time in weeks. Down on Illyria, children played near the ruins, their laughter mixing with the hum of construction drones. A memorial was being built, not just for the dead, but for the silence that had saved them. And high above, the WarArmada remained, not hidden, not aggressive, just present, because humanity had learned a hard lesson. Strength without wisdom is danger, but wisdom without strength is just a wish. Now they had both, and the galaxy would have to learn to live with that. The Cathar Dominion did not return as one. It returned as many. Without their hive mind core, the survivors split into factions, some seeking peace, others burning with rage. A few even reached out, not with weapons, but with words. They asked for a chance to live without conquest. Most were ignored, but not by everyone. On Illyria, now green again with new growth pushing through the ash, a small group of Cathar emissaries stood under guard near the rebuilt council hall. They wore no armor, only simple gray robes. Their eyes, once cold and empty, now held something unfamiliar. Fear, yes, but also hope. Daniel Ross watched them from a distance. He no longer carried a rifle. His uniform was clean, his rank now official, Earth's first interstellar liaison. He had spent weeks learning Cathar speech patterns, their history, their broken culture. He knew they were not all monsters. Just lost, Mara Finch walked up beside him, her datapad tucked under her arm. They're asking for land. Just one valley to farm, to live, Daniel nodded. And the Concordance? They're nervous. But they won't say no, not with the WarArmada watching. The truth was, no one wanted another war, not after what the human fleet had shown. The Cathar splinters that chose violence were hunted down by joint patrols, human, Veln, and Zenth ships working together. Those who chose peace were given a chance. It was fragile, but it was real. High above, the USS Vanguard orbited quietly. It no longer led a war fleet. It served as a symbol and a school. Young officers from a dozen species trained aboard its decks, learning human tactics, engineering, and ethics. Lila Grant taught them every day, not just how to fix a gravitic coil, but why restraint mattered more than firepower. She stood now in the main engineering bay, showing a group of Veln cadets how to balance power flow during high-stress maneuvers. Her hands moved with calm precision, her voice patient. She had lost friends in the war. She carried that weight, but she refused to let it harden her. Later, she met Owen Hale on the observation deck. He looked older, though only a few months had passed. The burden of leadership had etched lines into his face, but his eyes were still steady. The Concordance Council votes tomorrow, he said, on full human membership. Lila leaned on the railing, watching Illyria turn below. And if they say no? They won't, he paused. But if they do, we walk away. We don't need their approval to do what's right. She smiled faintly. Since when did you become so calm about losing power? I never wanted power, he said. Only protection, and now, maybe partnership. The vote came the next day, broadcast across every known channel. Species from every corner of the galaxy watched as the Concordance Council cast their decision. One by one, the lights turned green. Human membership was approved, unanimous. There were no cheers on the Vanguard, just quiet nods. They had not sought a throne. They had sought a seat at the table, and they had earned it. In the weeks that followed, changes spread through the galaxy. Human engineers helped rebuild shattered worlds. Human medics set up clinics on refugee moons. And human ships, once hidden, now patrolled the borders, not as conquerors, but as guardians. Daniel moved to a new post on the Concordance Council station near Helios Prime. His job was to listen, to translate, to build bridges where walls once stood. He missed Illyria, but he knew his place was here, where decisions were made and peace was fragile. Mara stayed with the fleet, but not as a soldier. She joined Lila in designing the next generation of ships, vessels built for deep space exploration, medical aid, and rescue. No weapons, no armor, just speed, sensors, and room for hope. One evening, as the three of them, Owen, Lila, and Mara, stood together on the Vanguard's bridge, a message came in from the outer rim. A distress call. Not from a war zone, but from a research outpost studying a strange energy signal near the Helios drift. It could be nothing, Mara said. Or it could be the next threat, Lila replied. Owen looked at them both. Or it could be the next discovery. He gave the order. Not to arm weapons, but to ready the science labs. The Vanguard turned, its blue lights glowing softly against the endless dark. Later that night, alone on the lunar observation deck of the New Earth Embassy, Owen watched Earth rise over the moon's edge. The planet looked small from here, blue, quiet, alive. He thought of all the years spent in silence, all the lives lost, all the fear that had shaped them. They had not come to rule the stars. They had come to keep them burning. And as the first human-built exploration ship, the Odyssey, launched toward the unknown signal with scientists and diplomats aboard, the WarArmada did not follow. It stayed behind, anchored in peace, ready if needed, but no longer waiting in the shadows. For the first time in history, humanity stood not as the galaxy's youngest child, but as its steady hand. Not because they were the strongest, but because they remembered what it felt like to be left behind, and they would never let anyone feel that way again.